German pronouns describe a set of German words with specific functions. As with other pronouns, they are frequently employed as the subject or object of a clause, acting as substitutes for nouns or noun phrases, but are also used in relative clauses to relate the main clause to a subordinate one. Classification and usage. Germanic pronouns are divided into 6 groups. Personal pronouns, which adverts an entity, such as the speaker or third parties. Possessive pronouns, which describe ownership of objects, institutions, etc. Interrogative pronouns, which are used in questions, such as who. Reflexive pronouns, in which the subject is also one of the objects. Relative pronouns, which connect clauses. Indefinite pronouns, which denote entities of quantities. The German personal pronouns must always have the same gender, same number, and same case as their antecedents. These rules apply for other pronouns, also. In German, a pronoun may have a certain position in the sentence under special circumstances. First and second person pronouns usually do not, and they can be used anywhere in the sentence except in certain poetical or informal contexts. Das im Schrank, das auf dem Tisch. There are also genitive direct objects. Since the personal pronoun does not have a genitive form, the genitive of the possessive pronoun is applied in those cases. These forms are bracketed. The genitive object, other than accusative or dative objects, is somewhat outdated. Old ich erinnere mich ihrer, old ich erinnere mich seiner, old ich entsinne mich ihrer. In modern German, erinnern rather takes the prepositional phrase with the preposition an. However, some verbs cannot be constructed otherwise, and thus genitive objects remain common language to some degree. This is true for entsinnen, but also for sentences such as, old and modern, let uns der Opfer des Marxismus, Faschismus, und Nationalsozialismus gedenken. Old and modern, ich klage herren Max Mustermann des Mords an. The two noun and pronoun emphasize as selber, and selbst have slightly different meanings than if used with nominal phrases. They normally emphasize the pronoun, but if they are applied to a reflexive pronoun, they emphasize its reflexive meaning. Personal pronouns, the verbs following the formal form of you are conjugated identically as in the first or third person plurals. For example, Sie sprechen Deutsch. This means either you speak German, or they speak German, and it is completely up to the context to determine which one it is. Ich rufe den Hunde ich rufe ihn. Genitive personal pronouns never indicate possession, which is not only outdated but wrong. That is, my book translates to mein Buch, or das Buch von mir. And never das Buch meiner. These pronouns may be used for the genitive object. Archaically, the unflected possessive pronoun can be used instead, for example vergie meineicht. Another place where they are used is after prepositions requiring the genitive case, for example sietens meiner. However, many of these prepositions can anyway, at least in more colloquial usage, be constructed with the dative, which however is no personal pronoun issue. Ironically, the Bavarian dialect never uses wegen, which in standard German must take the genitive, otherwise than with the dative, with the very one exception of personal pronouns, where wegen meiner is not altogether unknown. Possessive pronouns are formed by adding endings to the genitive case of the personal pronoun, eventually stripping it of its genitive ending. The endings are identical to those of the indefinite article in. Pronouns derived from articles, to replace a nominal by a pronoun that is derived from an article, the declined form corresponding to the gender, case, and number of the nominal phrases used. Although the pronoun form and the article form are the same in most cases, there are sometimes differences. Reflexive pronouns. There are also reflexive pronouns for the dative case and the accusative case. In the first and second person, they are the same as the normal pronouns, but they only become visible in the third person singular and plural. The third person reflexive pronoun for both plural and singular is Psych, Liet Psych. Cyverstecken Psych. Reflexive pronouns can be used not only for personal pronouns, Sie hat sich bald gekauft. Seine Listchen kaputt. Relative clause. A pronoun contains, or rather, has a relative clause, if there is ever a further meaning to express behind the pronoun, that is to say, some more clarification necessary. The relative pronouns are as follows. Instead, Welches may be used, which is seen to be more formal, and only common in interdependent multi-relative clauses, or as a mnemonic to German pupils to learn to distinguish das from das. The relative pronoun is never omitted in German. On the other hand, in English, the phrase, "The young woman I invited for coffee yesterday is my cousin's fiancée copyright completely omits the use of a relative pronoun. To state such a thing in German, one would say, Die Jungfrau, die ich gestern zum Kaffee eingeladen habe, ist die Verlobte meines Cousins. Note that the conjugated verb is placed at the end of German relative clauses. This was the preferable use in Latin sentences as well as in Old High German even for main clauses, and remains intact for subclauses, whereas in main clauses the verb takes the second place. Likewise, an English participle such as, the man coming round the corner is a thief, is best translated to a relative clause, for example, der Mann, der Gerard die Kommt, ist ended. However, it might be translated literally, which would result in what some call a very German sentence, for example, der Gerard die Kommt man ist ended. See relative clauses. Demonstrative pronouns. Demonstrative pronouns are used to refer to something already defined. Gender, is, dieser, is, erstere, is letztere, is, all declined like adjectives, der Genig, die Genig, das Genig, declined like, der Fahrt plus, Genig plus weak adj. Ending, used to identify a noun to be further identified in a relative clause. Dasselbe, dieselbe, dasselbe, declined like, der Fahrt plus, cell plus weak adj. Ending, used to indicate an identity stronger than der gleich would, however, the derselbe/der gleich distinction is rather nuanced, not usually insisted upon and, if so, rather complicated for native speakers. Interrogative pronouns. In German, there are the interrogative pronouns, or or question words. In German unregistered trademark sometimes called oew WAP paragraph RTER, since they all start with W. Most of them have a direct English equivalent, warum, why, was, what, wann, when, why, how. The interrogative pronoun, where is dependent on what is being described, where at, woher, where from, wohin, where to. Can be added to the front of many prepositions to make an interrogative term. An is inserted between when a preposition begins with a vowel, for example, wofür 1/4 lebe ich? What am I living for? Wora 1/4 sprichst du? What are you talking about? Welch is declined by gender and case. References. External links.